Hi, folks.
All right.
We'll start this up. Looking around the room, there are a lot of people here that are familiar with me, so they might have some fun with us throughout this. There are some new faces. I assume you guys might be wrestling fans or trying to leave your mark on the gaming industry in some way. I'm going to share, my personal story on how I ended up creating a wrestling game that got pretty popular over the past decade, and opened up the doors for me to be a full-time publisher and distributor of games. So for me, this probably started back around grade school. Pokemon obviously was really big when growing up. Magic the Gathering, I can remember always playing that stuff at lunchtime. And those sort of hobbies brought me to a store, Video Game Central. That was really my first experience with a game store or hobby store. And as a kid, we stumbled upon this game called WWE Raw Deal. Some people are familiar with it. I loved it. I became pretty much obsessed with it. It was a huge part of my childhood. I played it super competitively. I traveled around the United States with my friends and my brothers. We performed really well in that game from a competitive standpoint. But more importantly, I formulated a lot of relationships and friendships that I held to this day, and some of the best memories as a child. Unfortunately, the creator of that game, he got sick and he passed away. His name was Baron Banger Tug. I consider him my personal idol, not only because he created the game I love. He was the first person that had a book that he recommended, and I read this book called The Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius. And that book kind of sparked my love for actually reading books, something I never had. And it was something I did almost purely to impress, somebody I barely knew and looked up to. So we played Raw Deal. Unfortunately, Baron passed away, and then the popularity of this game significantly started to dwindle. It really left a void in our play group. Anybody who has a hobby that they really love, when it goes out of production, it's almost like a little bit of your lifestyle is non-existent. So we started looking for other games. One game that we stumbled upon was called Tops Attack. It was available in Target and most local stores for $1 a pack. So it was like, why not? $1 can't go wrong. Splurged a little bit, bought about 8 packs each between me and my friends group. And this was terrible. It was such a horrible game. The one we bought was football, and it had nothing to do with football at all. So I was almost insulted. I mean, I spent $1 on it, so I really couldn't complain that much. But what ended up happening was I took these cards that I had, and I didn't change the game too much. I just added rules to make it thematic to football. So we added a salary cap, so you couldn't just have the best cards. You had to pick and choose between the rare cards and the common ones to build your deck. And then instead of just playing one round, I broke it into 4 rounds, which we called quarters, like football. And this version of the game really caught on. We had about 3 local stores that were buying it out, and everybody was playing my version of Tops Attack for a long time. And what this ended up doing was inspiring the idea in my play group to design our own game. It seemed a little bit feasible here. We had the experience from Raw Deal. We made this alteration on Tops Attack that went really well. Why don't we design a mixed martial arts game? They wanted to do it based off UFC, and they had approached me on developing a game. So there were originally 3 people involved. One person came up with a really cool idea to use 2 different decks of cards, and I had written up a full game engine based on a UFC game. Now, personally, I don't like UFC, nothing against the sport. I much prefer the fantasy and the theatrics of WWE or anything else than the real fighting, but if that's your thing, cool. Wasn't personally my thing. But nonetheless, we wrote this really cool game engine. Somebody filled out all the cards. We had hired a photographer to do some local photography because we didn't have any branding rights. And then we decided to try to get licensing. And then hitting up Google, which is like the best tool you can have. And my kids are here. They have Google now, but we didn't have Google growing up. That's pretty strange to even think about. But we have this tool that can find you almost any information that you want. A quick Google search found that Tops, who made Tops Attack, that really awful game, had the rights to distribute MMA games. So pick up the phone, call Tops, try to get an appointment. Hey, I got this amazing idea. It's a UFC game. No response. Very hard to get through. But I tend to be really stubborn in life. I call them again and again, and just for whatever reason, I was not giving up on this. Eventually, I did get somebody to pick up a phone call, and I told them, hey, listen, I got some background in gaming. I have this UFC idea that I want to show you. We were playing Tops Attack, and that game, no offense, was terrible. And we made this playable, and people loved it. And I remember the takeaway from the phone conversation was the guy said, you've got people to buy Tops Attack. I don't know anybody who that game flopped so horribly in the US. The FIFA version was really popular, which I later found out. So they agreed to take a meeting with us, which was pretty unprecedented for me. I was waiting tables. I was also in college at the time. And we got this meeting at Tops, which was in Manhattan. It was an awesome building. I mean, I remember just being in awe, going in the elevators, had to go through security, get your picture taken. And when you get there, you step off the elevator, and it's this huge Tops logo in like chrome steel, surrounded with like superheroes and wrestlers and athletes, and basically all of my favorite things. And I remember at that moment that in some way, this is what I wanted to do. And like for me, working for Tops would have been the dream job. So we get in there with this product for MMA, and we give our pitch and our demonstration, and they said they really loved us, but almost immediately they dismissed the product, saying that MMA and trading card games don't align for the market. The people that are interested in MMA are not the people that are going to be in hobby shops 100% of the time. And I agreed with this, to an extent. I don't know many of my UFC friends that sit in the hobby shops with us and play these type of games. So they had actually asked if we would do a WWE game, which to me would have been a dream come true. Big wrestling fan my whole life. So when this opportunity came up, the players I worked with, they didn't want to. For whatever reason, they didn't want to budge. They said, we're staying with UFC. This is what we're going to do. We're going to try to get this product to market. And ultimately, I made a decision to let them do whatever they like, and I would try to bring in a WWE version. So I got home and I started the whole process over, and I actually made a board game based on wrestling. And using the contacts over at Tops, I got an opportunity to pitch the board game. And I came in and I said, when I called up, I don't know if you remember me. He said, of course I remember you. Come in, we'll set something up. So I pitched this board game version, and I remember in the early stages, they gave me a lot of really great insight that I didn't realize at the time. And most of it was based on like how you would sell your product. And one of the things that they said was they weren't necessarily interested in a board game. They wanted a more traditional model. And what I grew to learn was that basically would translate to, they want something that they could sell more than one copy of, right? So they set me out on doing a trading card game. And the main reason I didn't want to do that at first was, again, super loyal to Raw Deal, my favorite game. I didn't want to feel like I was replacing like a huge part of my life. But I also started thinking that there's this great opportunity ahead of me, and it would be silly to pass it up on something that was probably not coming back. And here I had, the chance to do something that would be incredible. How great would it be to have somebody publish your own wrestling game with WWE branding and all of that. So it took a little bit of time to develop this game from scratch again. And I have zero experience in the industry. Like I said, I'm a college student. I'm waiting tables. I'm starting off pencil and piece of paper, writing down notes on cards, cutting them out with a scissor, throwing them in a card sleeve. Gradually, I upgrade. I can put it in a Microsoft Word document, type out my card effects, cut them out. They don't even fit in sleeves at this point. They're hanging out a little bit. I get a little bit better and better at my craft. I'm using Microsoft Excel now and sizing it to be the right things. No pictures, no images, no text. And I'm designing this wrestling game based off of my experience from playing all these other games. So the most important thing that I wanted was something that felt like a wrestling game. A lot of people who are familiar with SuperShow, I hope that they will definitely agree that SuperShow really lets you feel like you're playing a wrestling match. So that was my goal, to set out and do that. And because I was working, or hopefully working with Tops, I had the ability to use WWE images from their website. So I started making things from all my favorite people. like John Cena, The Undertaker, Stone Cold, and I made all these decks, right? Set them all up. And I took it to Gen Con before I went back into Topps. And it was a really big hit. Everybody said that this was awesome, they would love it. And I followed back up with Topps. I get a second meeting with the wrestling to show them my version. And it was a huge, an honor to me because when I did my pitch, they actually brought other people in to redo the pitch because they seemed to really like the product. And it was just, it looked like the sky was the limit. There were just so many promises. We'll get a contract. You'll look good. You'll be happy with this. Now, this went on for a long time. I think it was probably up until next year. So it was probably a year of emails and back and forth where something would happen. And eventually, I felt that I was getting the runaround. You know, this is really what I wanted to do. But every email was, don't worry, we're going to set you up with a contract. We'll do something great. And it wasn't getting forward progress beyond that. So as Gen Con approached, I made a deadline for myself that if I didn't hear from Topps, I would make up my own characters and I would print my own version of the game. So we have our artists now. You know, a guy I found online to create 4 characters. They were pretty blatant ripoffs of John Cena, Randy Orton, The Big Show. I mean, so obvious now if you look back at it. And we designed this deck. So I had originally set out to do a trading card game. So I had a huge card pool of what I wanted. But being that I was doing this on my own now, I had to only fund certain cards. So what I did was I took the whole card pool that existed, and I said, if I were going to build a deck that would work for any character in the game, what is the deck that I would play? And being that I was a pretty good deck builder, I said, this could be the core game. Let's give everybody the best deck right off the bat. And I thought that was a really cool model because a lot of games become a money pit. And there are plenty of people here, you can have a second mortgage if you want to play SuperShow. There's no doubt about that. We appreciate everybody with that. But we offer things that you don't have to do that to play on a competitive level. So that was the start of the design of this game. And then while I was making my files, because I'm so disorganized, I started numbering these cards, you know, just in case they got mixed up. It'd be really simple to take your 30-card deck, which is essentially what it was, and put them back in order. And when I did that, I started realizing that you could interchange cards, but you would still have to play with cards number 1 through 30, which is a really unique design compared to other games. Most games that you play, you have free range to build what you want, more or less. This provided a framework that I, as the designer, could kind of control and regulate and try to keep the game fair. I had the game that I was ready. I had nothing except cards that I was printing out on my own home computer. I hired an artist, and I can't even tell you what the rate was back then. I mean, I might have invested $400 to do the whole game at that point, which is incredible. He knew nothing about the industry. I knew nothing about the industry. We put together this box set, and I only had cards. I had no dice. There was a dice component, no boxes, anything. So the next step was finding a way to have dice. Up until this point, I was using a D6, but then it had evolved to using symbols that we had created. And I was using blank counting cubes where I would handwrite the different logos on each cube, which would not really work for a marketed game. So I had the idea to take blank counting cubes, which is what they use for kindergartners and such to learn how to count, and put stickers on them to make like a makeshift dice to go along with the first 200 sets that I printed. So my friends and I, we actually spent a great deal of time hand cutting out these little stickers. Now, if you can imagine how small a D6 is, we're using like cuticle scissors to cut these little squares out, and we're hand assembling them. And you know, one of my takeaways I'll remember, my grandfather he's a successful man, great guy, but kept urging us about how stupid we were for doing this and not paying somebody else to do it and get it made, which I don't think he could understand that if I had the money and the means to do it, I would gladly have gone that route rather than, you know, make a sweatshop in my basement with my 3 friends before Gen Con. So we hand make all these dice, and we still didn't have a way to package it. And I don't know how it came up, but my uncle who I was living with at the time, suggested to put it in a Chinese food container, like a little takeout that you would put like your fried rice or your lo mein in. And I would say that's a great idea. I think it would be really interesting if you store game in a Chinese food container. And we took this idea and we bought Chinese food containers, which are surprisingly cheap, like $20 for like 100 of them. And the Chinese restaurants were really happy to unload these things for us. And we printed stickers locally, so we put this game out with Chinese food containers, stickers on it, handmade dice, and cards printed at a local shop. And we drove it to Gen Con. It was me and my two friends. Something I'll never forget, Nissan Versa. We had so many of these Chinese food container games in the car that the person in the back seat actually had to get in the car first, and the passenger had to close them in the door to make sure that we could get there. Because again, we don't have a truck or a van. We have three guys, a Nissan Versa, and all our inventory. We brought this to Gen Con where we had a demo space where, probably shouldn't say this on record, but we weren't supposed to be selling them, but we were selling them. $20 was like our deal, and we probably moved about 100 or so copies of them at $20 each, which was like absolutely incredible. To me, dream come true, probably more money than I've ever seen in a day, ever. And people kept saying, you've got to bring this idea to Kickstarter. Now, I wasn't familiar with Kickstarter at the time, did my research, and I said, this might be a really good idea. Let's take this, go to Kickstarter, let's see if we have some options to go overseas and get it produced. And that's what we did. We had an $8,000 goal at the time, which, if you're not familiar with Kickstarter, I think at this point most people are familiar with how crowdfunding works. You have a great idea, you don't have the money for it, you ask for people to pay up front, and you promise you'll get the product to them later. So we did that with this product, and it was an $8,000 goal. And a great friend of mine, his name was Maurice Thompson. Every single week we would go to stores. We had one little pop-up banner, some stuff to give away, our Chinese food container versions, whatever was left from the 200 reprint, and we would try to get people to go check out the Kickstarter. It took about the full 30 days to get to the $8,000. You can probably go now and look and see how many backers there were. But I had a relative who ended up putting $900 in it the last day to get us over the top, which without, I don't even think it would have gotten there. But it was a full grind. When I tell you, people don't understand as a startup how much dedication goes into that. I'm talking Wednesday was local stores, Thursdays was travel out of the state, do whatever you can to get people to play, one at a time. If you did a demo and you ran 4 demos in a day, it was a lot, starting up at that point. But we did fund. And we raised enough money to do a print run overseas. And for the first time, we did deliver this beautiful product. It was in a nice hard box. It was professionally printed cards, not from a printer who was a paper printer at the time. And we made this really great game. They botched our first print run pretty great. It was called a Super Hombre or Snake Pit, and every box set came with 2 snake pits and no Super Hombre. So they had to send us all the second character. We had to hand open every single box, reassemble them, redo them. And that was the first time when I said, I am no longer going overseas for anything. Everything is going to be made in the US. So we had this first version of the game that was printed overseas. We were really lucky that the game just kept going. We started doing bigger trade shows outside of Artist Alley and such. And we would go to Gen Con, which was the biggest ones. And we started running events with new players. And Gen Con does this thing where you either pre-sign up for events for games you like, or you can buy generic tickets, which is just like a ticket that you can use to play any game. We started selling events with 80 to 100 people, which was like unheard of for any sort of game. I mean, we were out selling tickets for some games that were giving away $10,000 in prizes, and here we were playing wrestling games with people who just learned how to play, picked up a starter deck, and they were really loving it. And we were having such an uphill battle at the time because generic tickets are worthless in this scale of trying to get space at these shows. Because in theory, I could go up and buy 500 of them and turn them in and say we had 500 people play in the event, which was not the case. So we were in this really hard battle with Gen Con to try to get more space each year because we couldn't prove that we were selling as many tickets as we were. So a huge hurdle that we ended up coming into was Gen Con didn't want to give us space at all. And at this time, the game was selling pretty well. We were moving to print it back in the United States with boxes and cards, and they bumped us from Gen Con. They said that you can't come this year, seats are sold out, booths are sold out, better luck next year. Now, this was crippling. I mean, we're a startup company at this point. I took my idea. I had an official partner at this point. We had a printing route through the US, and the biggest show of the year, they basically said, we'll see you next year. And he was a little condescending. He said, the only way to do this show is if you're a sponsor. So we'll see you next year. So I spoke to my friend and I said, listen, hold up. How much does a sponsorship cost to be in? And it was a pretty high price tag. It started at about $30,000. Now, you go back, it took me a month to raise $8,000. And I had said to my friend, if we're going to take a risk on anything, let's take a chance on ourselves. Could you get us a business loan for this? And my business partner, these guys love him, General Manager John Calais. If they don't know him, he's a very intelligent financial guy, CPA by trade. He got us a business loan for Gen Con, and we called back and we decided to do the sponsorship. So now we had an official looking product. We still sold some stuff in the Chinese food containers because people love that. I had an idea to just do 2,000 fortune cookies with advertisements as things to give away. I don't know, some people probably weren't around. Chris Pate was probably around for fortune cookie days. You got one with you? Oh man. Yeah. So this is, we were giving out fortune cookies where you can win prizes. If you have one with you, I'll be thoroughly impressed. This got to be about 8, 9 years old. Oh no, here he goes. We go. So I got together, most of my friends that I brought down with me were waiters and things like that. And we had a really successful Gen Con. I mean, we were able to pay the loan back the day we got back from Gen Con, which was absolutely, to me, again, I didn't grow up totally poor, but I didn't grow up very privileged. So it was like a bizarre thing to me to be in that position. And we were able to pay this loan back. And this was a really big time for us because it showed that we had a good product and we had a good team. It was a real rinky-dink team of people, and we pulled it off. So we're really proud of that. And at this point, I wanted to travel more. I was still working at the time. And if Gen Con was a success, now we have to add these bigger cons. We got to really add to the grind. And I had spoken to my job about time off that I could get. You can definitely, is there a prize on it? Yes, you can definitely, we'll honor that one here. So that, you got, does it say you win a prize or what?
Yeah, win a prize. Welcome to the prize winner.
Wow, that's awesome. Insane. So you're actually, I don't know if you're allowed to give out cookies outside of your booth. So we don't do that as much anymore. Because now, at the time when we first started, before the sponsorship, if they kicked us out of Artist Alley, it'd be okay, but you're not going to risk your sponsorship. But yeah, wow, that's incredible, Chris. Thank you for that. So at the time, I was working full-time. And for anybody who's interested in doing this, I cannot stress enough to you that if you have something that you're passionate about and you love, you need to have a job while you're doing this, whether it's to make games or become a wrestler or whatever your passion is, you should have something to supplement your life, and you need to find time to do what you love on top of that, because having money to do things is so essential. You're not going to be able to do anything. Everything costs money, so you have to be able to have some sort of income. Without the $500 saved up to make the first piece of art, I would have never been able to start SuperShow, and then from there, the crowdsourcing and stuff. So I was still working full-time at this. And I was getting to a point where I was taking off a lot to start traveling. And my job, I asked, how many days off a year can I take off without getting in trouble? And they were refusing to answer. They said, you have two options. You can work or you cannot work. And at that point, I said, I cannot work. My wife is here now. She's been there for almost day one. And we just did it, right? We lost the job. was like, okay, I came home one day. I mean, it's true. I came home and I said, I think I just lost my job, right? And we said we figured it out. So yeah, we did. Yeah, it's just, that's never an easy conversation when but you were supportive.
Got married and then you left, and then I left a month later.
Yep, she left the same job a month later, and in that sense, the rest is history. We'll talk a little bit about the history in that sense. And again, people have been really supportive about Super Show, and I'm talking about my personal experience, but I haven't really gotten into what made the game successful, besides being affordable-ish and fun. My experiences as a competitive gamer were never fun. And I say that if you look around, yes, baby girl. Oh, what you got? You want to go back to the pool? We got it. We'll go back to the pool. So, it's back in Queens, but you guys are welcome to join. I lost where I was at. Sorry about that, Bean. So, where was I? Anybody know?
How great the community is.
So yes. So again, I play Raw Deal very competitively in Magic and other games. And if you look around the room, people are really serious. And if you do bad, you have a miserable time. And anyone who's not in your circle is your arch nemesis. You can't tell me otherwise. You don't share deck tech. You don't share good times. It wasn't the experience that I wanted for Super Show the game. One of our Kickstarter campaigns that I think funded in maybe 2 minutes or less, our whole Kickstarter was based off community first, competition second. And if you've ever seen people playing Super Show, what people constantly come up to me and say is people are having so much fun while they're playing. And that to me is almost baffling because it's like, what else would you be doing if you're spending your money to go play games with your friends? You should be having a good time. And this really took on a life of its own. We always pushed play it forward, where we wanted people to take care of people in the community and help them out. And I can't tell you how this has snowballed into people come up to me and say, hey, I want to play your game. And I walked away from the table with so many free characters and things. People are hooking me up with stuff. And a lot of people say that's a terrible business model to have. You don't want people giving new players free stuff. But I said I think it's the opposite. I think these people come in and they see what they're getting into, and it's something they want to be a part of. And I found if people enjoy what you make, they will find ways to support you one way or another. And we have a lot of different ways that people could do that, and they do that. So we had this growing community, this growing game, and it seemed like we had a rocket strapped to our back. It was one of my friends, another guy from New York, and my wife was with us, and we had some friends working on this project with us. And then COVID rolled around, and COVID was really awful for so many reasons, and it had derailed so many lives physically and just on their day-to-day operations that COVID came around and it put the whole world at a stop. And we had this really gritty company and team that just any sort of hurdle that went our way, we kind of pushed through. And we were able to get through COVID for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, which was huge, was early on I had mentioned we went overseas for production. And then we had so many hurdles that we started producing the game locally. And while so many other companies couldn't get any product because they couldn't get shipments from overseas, well, the shipments doubled and tripled in price. We were able to continue business almost as usual because we were shipping here in the US. And that was really key for us to put out things during COVID. And then also there was this huge boom of using Zoom and all these online, basically video chats. And we were having, 60, 70 person Zoom events with our team, running these events for people to play. And Chris Pate, who had the fortune cookie, probably won like 90% of those events during that time. But we were having a really good time. Yeah, and COVID was a really awful time for a lot, but it was a very successful year for us because we were charging for online events, we were selling different product, and I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me and said, this game and this community got me through what could have been arguably the darkest times of our life, and thank you for that. And again, I feel very humbled and blessed that people feel that way, but again, I can't take credit for all that. It's the community behind it that really made it special. So my partners and I, one of them here, Mr. Griff Briggs, who just walked in, we came up with an idea to try to give back after such a successful COVID time. And we created a Fill the Van a charity where we raised money for toys and basically families and stuff who might have had an awful time during COVID. And I think the first year we gave about 19 cases of toys to the local charity, and we continued it since COVID. So that's been like a real honor and a privilege to show how great not only the community is to us, but to reach in their pocket and not only give for themselves, but to give to other people is really a true testament of what we've had built over the past few years. And we were able to go to Gen Con and Origins and the big shows again, where most of the big companies totally pulled out. This is when COVID is starting to be on the tail end and people still going to get there. And this gave us the opportunity to continue to grow as a company. It would have been hard to compete with those companies on that level, but we actually found the gap where we were able to still produce, because we're producing here in the US, and to continue to grow. So the next couple of years was a real wild ride. We did some Kickstarter campaigns, which through the help of the community, we went from taking a month to fund to, we had a couple campaigns that funded in 2 minutes. It's the 2-minute man. I say that with pride. And then we've also done some really cool stuff where not only were we producing our game, we were able to crowdfund 6 books based on these characters. So originally we were denied the opportunity to have branding, and ultimately we created our own branding, and now we made those characters of value. And then we did a lot of different innovative things besides just selling the product. We've had the real honor of working with real wrestlers. To me, that was a dream come true. So not only were we selling the characters that we created, but then we started doing contracts with independent wrestlers. And then the word started getting out to them where these independent wrestlers could get a paycheck selling wrestling cards rather than just selling t-shirts and other things. And then some wrestlers would start referring us to other wrestlers. And working with the local independent homegrown companies, we've got some big name introductions, guys like Ricochet, who went on to go to WWE. One of my idols in the industry, Cole Cabana, who had this amazing podcast, which featured some of the biggest wrestlers. He featured us. He introduced us to the guys that would go on to found All Elite Wrestling, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, along with Cody. Cody swears he was there first. We're following along with that. And it just all these crazy opportunities. We did a set with New Japan Pro Wrestling where I think it took 8 minutes to sell out, which was absolutely insane to watch. This weekend we now have Southern States Wrestling working with those. I heard they put on an incredible opportunity with that, and we've been grinding out through SuperShow. And again, we're so blessed and fortunate that this wrestling game has now given us the opportunity to expand as a company, which was sink or swim for me. And with the addition of a growing team, we were now able to publish some other games that we were working on that I created at the same time. We now have Scallywager on the market. My 11-year-old daughter designed a game called Rummy Gummies that we printed as well. And everything really kind of stabilized and opened up a lot of different doors. And as I mentioned, it's not something I will ever fully take credit for. I do believe that every team needs 3 fundamental pieces. You need people to make it, you need people to sell it, and you need people to manage the money. And there's no individual on earth that can do all 3. Is how they go, you're raising your hand, you can do all 3? I think you can one day. If anybody can do it, it's you. So we have a really great team behind us. Just in general, I think that the passion that we show and the energy that comes is really infectious. And I hope that not only for our games, your other games out there, really try to replicate the idea that you can make a ton of money not taking advantage of your customers through random things that they have to obtain multiple copies of. And to really propagate this idea that we want you guys to enjoy your time. And that's the most important thing out of all of this. A lot of people here in this room definitely look forward to this event, and we have some really competitive events going on They have things called Border Wars. They have the SRG Olympics going on, title matches, and everybody here has become like one huge family. And I know they say that's a red flag when it comes to work, but I don't think it's a red flag when it comes to the people you spend your time with. So more or less, that is my sort of how things got started. And I know I get a lot of questions about, would you sell this? Would you sell your rights to someone else? Would you have done things differently? I cannot speak to any experiences but my own. You know, a lot of people say the better route would have been to try to sell your IP and get a percentage. I can only speak to the fact that we built this product and this brand from the ground up. From there, we started off with a Squarespace website, which is a really basic website, selling one or two products. We've expanded. Our IT guy here is now, he maintains a website with thousands of products, single cards, apparel, all these amazing things. And we have used distribution. You know, we're really fortunate to get the GTS and different stores, but the bulk of our distribution comes right out of my house. And my wife, every day, she does some packing and shipping and some orders. My kids, they help out. They're a little destructive, but they're definitely there in on it. My grandmother, which has always been really funny, yeah, she's still kicking. She still packs what she can. We hand assembled all our products for a very long time, and 100% of character sets that we did were bagged by my grandmother. The Grand Machine, she just rolls through them all. Now we're really fortunate where our whole company was built out of my grandparents' basement, which again, truly grateful for them to open up their homes to give us that opportunity. Now it's actually run from my basement of my house, which is, you know, a privilege. But again, real homegrown experience. And the reality is you can absolutely do these things if you try. Any sort of hurdle that gets in your way, you have to find a workaround. You know, for me, if I didn't have dice, I made them. If I didn't have a box, I used a Chinese food container. If I wasn't allowed to sell, I did it anyway. I don't know if that's a good advice in the last one, but you really, if you're focused on a goal, you have to commit to it 100%. And whether there'll be a better route, I can't really speak to that. I can just speak to what it's like to manufacture, assemble, and distribute on a daily basis from our home. And I really love what I do. I mean that. And all these guys here that support me, I say that I'm truly privileged. A lot of times people say, I never want to bother you. It's never a bother. You know, I've had a lot of different jobs. It's my responsibility to take care of everybody here. And it really is a privilege to do that. But the position that I put myself in, I'm really glad I got a supportive family. It is a full-time responsibility to do something like this. And I would even say, at times it's even more than a full-time job. Even at your full-time job, you're able to clock out. But not really with this. So if you guys want to have any other specific questions, you can answer them here. Yes, sir. Okay.
I played the game for a couple years. What does SRG stand for?
Some random guy. Official. Yeah.
The second one, if you're allowed to, we're talking about when you're signing a account, what was your most expensive acquire?
Matt Cardona. Total? It has been a couple times. Probably upwards of about $15,000. Yeah. And, you know, travel, food, deals, yeah. Oh, yeah, so sorry. The questions were, what does SRG stand for? Originally, it was the Resk Games. There are some logos with that. I thought it was a much more fun, entertaining, less egotistical name to be Some Random Guy's Universe, which I think flows really nice. So that is the official name. And the second question was, what was our most expensive acquisition, single? That would be Matt Cardona. Matt Cardona is incredible. Well, a great story I have with Matt Cardona is when I was first designing the game as a board game, I had driven to a Brooklyn Cyclones game to meet Matt. And he was there with Mark Henry. We got a Mark Henry shirt here in the front row. And they had an extra person next to me to throw out the first pitch, and they denied. And I just snapped, was like, I'll do it. And they let me throw out the first pitch. I felt it was a strike. I don't know, some people said I threw it a little slow. But Matt Cardona was there, and I asked him to sign the game, and he was like, no problem, bro. But he didn't have a marker, so I was like heartbroken. But he actually found the marker and came back, and he signed the original copy And he also signed the first pitch ball as Zack Ryder, which was his WWE name. And then several years later, when I worked with him, he's one of the people we donate to at the charity. I brought that ball to him. So I actually have the first pitch ball signed by Zack Ryder and Matt Cardone. I think it's a really great thing that I have in my office. My kids play with it all the time, and I feel like as a parent, I'd rather see them have a good time with it. You know, the ball is still the ball to me, even though it won't be as pristine, but it's still up in my office right now. Ricky Wright.
Okay, so, no, it's a good question. So, in the 10 years of this game being around, we've seen many card games, specifically Transformers, that became big and then dropped off and just disappeared. Dragon Ball Z, UFC, all of these games that are huge game, like, that have a huge following, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they go away. Do you think that Super Show being relatively small let you kind of get your feet wet, and would you want it to stay small and just grow bigger, or would you rather have all of a sudden you have 1,000 members or 1,000 players jump in?
So being in Tops and being in the office and having a bird's eye view to the conversations that go on, those games are designed to have a limited life expectancy. And it might be a shock to some people, it's not, but they're actually designed on purpose, knowing that the first few sets are going to be huge. They design power creep into it, which is basically people have to buy those cards to compete, and they know that it'll run its course. So when you look at games with big IPs, they come and go every couple of years, and then they repeat the process over. This is not an industry secret. This is how things are done. So I do believe as Super Show grows, and it does continue to grow, because we do see different names and different stores picking us up. The reason why we were able to stick around for a decade is because of the things we offer. That is competitive starter decks, and even like with the new releases we just did, which might be sold out already. For those of people who are not familiar with Super Show, every year or so we release new decks that are made of, in my opinion, the best deck that you can make without using duplicates. So it's a good pitch to somebody who says, hey, you want to play this game, you buy this deck for $30, and it has all the cards that you would otherwise have to track down. No other game would offer that, because that would not make any sense, right? They rather somebody invest $700-800 trying to track down the cards they want. We just give it to you in the box. But because we have things like custom artwork that you guys are familiar with, and how big that is to the value, that's ways that we can sell more product and keep people involved. So I don't think the limitations of growing would hurt us as much as they hurt other companies. I think that we would just have to expand beyond my basement at that point, which we have plans for.
Into the living room, too.
Yeah, that's it. I'll do it. My wife is like, you're not taking the whole garage. I got 50% of the garage right now.
Just keep all your cards in my basement.
What was your thought on being fast on the real Vaders and all this?
So we're talking about the SRG Olympics, which is, again, this is the first time. We have a really great gaming community, and people came up with this idea, which I thought was going to be a train wreck. And I'm proud of everybody here, because it was not a train wreck, and I'm shocked. I can admit when I'm wrong. You drafted human beings to your Olympic team rather than just a card that you used. So you could be picked like dodgeball last, and everybody took it all in good fun. And I got passed up by 7 idiots. I'll say it right there. Okay? 7 idiots. Okay. And I'm happy to announce that I was 3-0 in round 1. And we were undefeated in round 2, and I will wear my gold medal very proudly if we're able to win that here.
Undefeated too.
It's true.
Drew, I'm taking Steve if he's available.
Yeah, this guy promised me. Yeah.
No matter what.
Steve, no matter what. Steve is one of the best players in the game if you actually get him to play competitively. Most of the time he doesn't, and he still wins, which is even crazier.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like there were like 3 people on my list. It's like if Sean is there, if Loudmouth is there, if Kurt Wolf is there, just because it's funny. I didn't expect 2 of the 3 to be there.
I'm very happy that James Booker, now the smartest man in the LFF, did draft me.
Don't bring up Booker around, Johnny. So do you think that part of the game's success is allowing the people who play in the community to be able to contribute, like with alternate arts, being able to do the characters and stuff? Is that like allow it? That's how I explain it to people. It's like it's not just a game that you buy; you can actually tweak and it's not one person; it's everybody. Like, think that because anytime I have a character idea, everybody around me in my group, they're like, "Let's play it out. Let's see what this is kind of like to play." You think that helps move the game along to be more personable and?
Yeah, I think the question is, how do I feel that allowing custom content affected the game, right? More or less. I think it's a huge part of it. And again, when we started the characters, we made up fictional characters. We gave a story that was intertwined with our real story, and that's really what sparked everything. You know, the characters were from an underground fighting federation, very based off coming out of a basement, and all our characters had this grounded in our story, but they were fictional. And when we opened up this custom aspect to add characters in, it really allowed other people to be part of that story, which has been, really amazing to watch and to see people become a part of it. And on its own, it wasn't part of the design. It was more so something that I thought would be really cool to have. But it actually gets people way more invested in the game because, like, you're a character. Not only are you a character that you can play as yourself, but other people can play as you. And as somebody who makes the game and see the joy and the reaction that people get, treating regular people, myself included, as almost like a celebrity. People are collecting autographs, so now they want to meet the creator of each card or the people. And now people are signing autographs at events and taking pictures. And again, it just reinforced this idea of community between people. And when you're a part of something, literally your picture is in it, your likeness is in it, you're more likely to be around it. And then you're more likely to, oh wow, this guy did really well using my character, or he did really terrible using my character. Well, it's got to make it better. It keeps you involved even if you're not. So I think it was a really good decision, and it was a hard decision. No other game that I know of has the accessibility to creator where you could reach out to me and have a phone call, discuss a card, and get it done. So that is something that takes a ton of work and dedication to the community, but I think that the payoff was well worth it.
To add on to that as a follow-up question, why is it that you think that other games have not done that? Because I think you're absolutely right. I think SuperShow is the only game I've ever heard of where the players of the game become the game on such a big scale. I mean, it would probably be quite easy for another game just to copy you and try and do the same thing. So why is it you think they haven't?
You have to have the temperament and the patience to deal with, again, I mean this very bluntly, but honestly, to deal with like some of the ego that goes with that. There's a lot of backlash that you can get. People say it's pay to play. This guy's character is better because you know them. This is where, and sometimes things are accurate, sometimes they're not. And it is a headache that is not worth it for a lot of people. And you're dealing with people that are spending a good amount of money, and you want them to be happy at the end of the day. And most people are happy, some people are not. And for them, it's not worth it. And in a lot of cases, it's not worth it, especially because of the business model that they have. Again, to compare yourself to Magic the Gathering or Lorcana, other games that are great, but it's a different model. Their money comes from the fact that a new set releases and you have to buy 4 or 5 boxes trying to get the lands you need just so you can play. Why would they even offer a service where they make a one-time fee where they have to coordinate with an artist, coordinate with a print run, deal with the customer directly, get it play tested, have somebody else's input on something that you're creating, and then at the end of the day, deal with the possible backlash of somebody being unhappy. It doesn't even seem worth it to a lot of people. And people say don't let people do it at all. And I'm always very, very flexible. If people will deal with me, I always advertise that you have zero input at all, which is not the case. But at least if I advertise that up front, I know that if it ever came down to it, I could say, well, you read that. It says you get no input except what it looks like. But that, as you guys know, is never, ever how it goes down. But it's just the liability of having to deal with somebody for what is not a lot of money on the grand scheme of things, right? Art costs money, printing costs money, time costs money. So I just don't think it's overall worth it for people with a different model. Our model needs that sort of thing. Yes, sir.
One of the big things that drew me into the game was the artwork on a lot of the cards. I thought it was really creative, really awesome. How did you find most of the artists for the cards?
Word of mouth, freelance websites, portfolios, different things. As I said, I think Nuno was like $10, $15 an image when we started. Now he gets like hundreds of dollars for each image that he does. But that's the nature of the business. Just to go a little bit off track with that, I try to give people advice that are really talented artists and they're not booked. And it's just your prices are too high. If you're an artist and you're not booked solid, you have to lower your prices. Eventually you'll get to a point where you can turn people away unless they pay you more money, and that's kind of where you have to start.
Who's one wrestler you wish?
Financially, I would say Dwayne The Rock Johnson would just make the most sense, right? Big Drew McIntyre guy. Drop the ball with that one. I don't know, drop it. Yeah, but I'd say The Rock would be probably the most game changer, right, overall.
You sure it's not?
Maybe the Titan, yeah.
No, the stone.
The Stone, yeah.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
New folks in the back, any questions? It's a lot to take in. So one of the amazing things about this whole journey is that it started off as a game that you could play at your tabletop, has grown into fantasy wrestling federations all over the country. I mean, we have titles that span the whole country. We have titles that have now broken down into 3 territories: Midwest Coast, Deep South, and the most prestigious of the 3, the tri-state area. And then we have local stores, and then again we have some books that are coming up. We have a Kickstarter now that's going to be based off Lucha, if anybody was familiar with that, which I'm really excited for, working with the original creator on a, basically a SuperShow spinoff. So there's just so much to take in. But if anybody's interested, I would say just come jump in an event. We have a really fun environment. Generally with the cowboy hat.
Yeah, I just want to say for the people that are new, that are thinking about checking it out, I literally came to this game because this man said, I was dressed as Macho. I told him I had a Macho Man outfit. He said, come to the booth. I'll take care of you. I'll give you a deck to play. You'll have a great time. For 2 to 3 years, I just played at Origins at Gen Con. That was it. It was my Magic Methadone. I did not play Magic. I played this. I had a wonderful time. It was a great time. And until COVID, I was just playing once or twice. And it was the greatest part of the show. It was just the events were loud. Everybody was in character. It was awesome. I lost every single time I was out within by 8 o'clock. But Steve made me feel like, hey, you did great. Did you have a good time? Everybody had played. Even one of the best players, John Paul Marino, made sure I had a good time and enjoyed it. So definitely, it's not anything like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or anything. When you go, you want to have fun, casual games. There is competitive. At the highest level, competitive, but the lowest level, you're literally sitting there playing beer and pretzel style, where you want your opponent to scout if you want the match to keep going. So definitely recommend it for anybody. It's very easy. You can buy one starter deck, play it. You don't have to buy anything else. You can play it with your friends, but it's great. I highly recommend it.
I'm still blown away that you call this Magic Methadone.
Because I can't spend. Because Magic I spend a lot of money on. This I only spend a little bit of money on, and it keeps my competitive out of
He's just a casual gamer, Steve.
I appreciate that.
I took that term from Chef Nate.
Oh boy. Yeah, I think we've built a lot of great relationships. Like looking around the room, I feel like I know a lot of people here personally, which is more to say from other gaming industries and companies in general. And to me, that's really what we set out to do. I always joke and said if I want to be rich, I would sell insurance. We went a different route here. And maybe it might make it might work out where we become super, super successful. I mean, we're successful enough that it's a full-time gig. We support a lot of artists. You know, any day we have about 12 artists on our team. They're working almost full-time on projects. We have graphic designers, and to me, that's just been really incredible to work with people on professional levels and on baseline levels and getting them introduced to the industry and out there. It's been really awesome to have everybody here and even the support to fill this room. Sorry, hand up from the Titan.
So I listened to your podcast with Ron Top Table Talk. You spoke on this was supposed to be a UFC type game. Do you ever see you taking the way this game is played and branching it to a different thematic other than wrestling?
So, yes, definitely. We've seen some shades of that with like the Ikazo version we've put out. The Super Lucha version will be still wrestling themed, but a little more whimsical. But one of the biggest pitches that I had towards Topps was they own the rights to, at the time, it's changed significantly, UFC, Marvel, WWE, and Star Wars. And I'm like, you could just reskin this, and like, how cool would it be to have Darth Vader versus John Cena? And they're like, no, you can't mix brands. And I'm like, but you don't have to advertise it as a mixed brand. You can put out like your Star Wars version, and then you can put out your wrestling version, and people on their own can do whatever they want in their house with it, you know? And they weren't in favor of that, which I thought was a huge design flaw. Because I love that aspect of it. And now we've had like limited edition cards. You have a wrestler who can fight a dragon or a robot or a baby, you know, we have all these different things now. And the reception has been great. I think overall people like that. I grew up on Mortal Kombat and Smash Brothers and, you know, all these crazy things where it wasn't just humans versus humans. There's all these different people competing. And I thought that was amazing. And I think that Topps really missed out on the opportunity of the gold mine if they had a game like SuperShow where you could brand it across the board, and it worked, right? Because even though the rules are to make it feel like a wrestling game, you could still apply that to any sort of fighting, which is the case with superheroes or like Star Wars or like I said, or MMA. So I think they really missed the boat with that. But you know, as we explore different things and grow, you might see different licensing. You know, somebody tried to get us licensing for Ninja Turtles one time that didn't pan out. But I mean, how cool would it be to see a Ninja Turtles version of SuperShow one day?
Yeah, I wonder who did that.
Yeah. We do have Franklin the Turtle.
We have Gideon Guts. I mean, come on.
You guys, any other questions on it here? Mr. Piglet, sir.
Steve, I want to know, been in business for yourself for what, 10 years?
No, I've been in business for myself. My wife, sir, could confirm. I'd say probably 6 years. Victoria Jo is 4 now, so probably the process started before she was born, right? So I'd say about 6 years.
So that's my question. I'm also a small business owner. So how do you balance, like, I know you have young girls that have been born and a wife, and you also sell me cards at 4 a.m. So how do you balance family time with, because that's something that I've been trying to work out. I've been married for 2 years. That's a personal question.
No, a lot of it goes credit to my wife, right? My wife takes a lot of that burden with the kids. I try to help out when I can. I try to, you guys see I do cooking videos with them and stuff. I try no matter what I'm working to take, even if it's an hour to spend with them before I really dive into work. I try to make sure we have some breakfast and we do some quality time. Now as they get older, I try to black out my cell phone if I go and do things with them. But it would not be possible without a supportive wife. That's for absolutely certainty. And again, at the end of the day, I tell my kids I do this for them too, just to kind of pursue something I love, and they can do the same thing. So if you don't make time for your family at the end of the day, it's kind of, you know, a moot point. But my wife, a ton of credit, obviously. My kids are pretty good and supportive. And the fact that I work downstairs right now is definitely a huge plus, you know. So thank you. It's a good question. Give me some points with the wife too.
Yeah, put your wife over. Who asked you up first?
I X'd out Samantha. Well, actually, she hates this story, but my wife is very attractive, and when I had the opportunity to talk to her, it was actually at my grandmother's house, just hanging out with my brother and her friends. I asked her to set me up with one of her friends. That's what I said, like, as a move to try to make her jealous.
That's the most cheap wrestling ever.
It worked. It worked. I made her get a date. It wasn't a date, but I think she thought it was.
I did not.
Yeah, I did. We went on a neutral dinner with multiple people. I didn't disclose to other people first, so I felt out the situation, see how it go. But it worked out really well, I must say. I totally overachieved. Sure.
Just to let you know.
Okay, that mean we gotta get out of here?
I don't know.
We have
Right.
a triple threat title match.
All right.
One last question.
Sure.
One last question.
So you, I've heard you talk about the past a lot today. There was a period of time when you were super show for kids in a school environment.
Yeah, well, that was a great time. When we were in Queens, we were invited to a program called the SASF. And my wife and I had started up a program for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I think we did it about 2 years or so. And we had, the first time I came in to show them Super Show, the teachers were blown away. It was an after school program that I had about 30 kids sitting down and playing. And they're like, how did you get these kids to pay attention and do something? I'm like, I don't know, game's fun. And they really liked it. So they set us up with a program where we set up like a Super Show league. And you could only challenge for the title belt if you were on good behavior. And we had certain rules where if you cursed, you would get -1 to your dice rolls. And a good rule that I would like was if you dropped your dice on the floor, the next roll was -1. So so nobody, yeah, I will. I think you guys have a moment. This is one of the special things about this game. So we, nobody would be out of line. We had a kid, Jonathan, who would like put on a mask and he would cut promos and like send them to him. He was like all in on wrestling. He was really a wrestling. Yeah. And he cheated so bad, right? And I go, Jonathan, you think I don't know you start with the same 3 cards every time you play. And that's, there we go. So,
He made Psycho rules.
so his ring name was Psycho. So I made up a stipulation called Psycho Rules, where we could both pick the 3 cards that we started with. That's the thing. But he wanted to wrestle, and he had some sort of condition where he couldn't take like a blunt injury, so he couldn't participate in gym, or it could be fatal to him, which is really tragic. So we booked wrestling shows, and we were able to put wrestling shows on in the public school, and we made Jonathan a part of it, but he didn't know. We made him Smiley's manager, and he was like on the mic, you know. What we did was the first one, he didn't know what was going to happen, but the ref would take a bump, and then I went, Jonathan, put the shirt on, and I gave him the shirt, and he slid in and had a freak out. It was awesome. So you know, like the whole crowd go crazy. But he wanted to be a heel so bad. He like hated that we made him a baby face, right? Like this is how into it he was. So the next show, we had like a similar spot with the ref bump, and right before it went down, I was like, Jonathan, you're gonna run in the ring right now, and you're gonna logo Smiley. And he's like, what? I'm like, just do it. Don't think about it. And he went in and he hit like the champion that he held with the logo and cost him the title. And it was like probably the greatest moment of his life. It was so awesome to like give him his like wrestling moment. And that was possible through the school. Eventually, my wife and I we moved away from Queens, so it wasn't feasible to keep the program. But it was a really great program. Thanks for that question. Folks, I'm sure you got a lot of games to do. I would sit and chat with you all now. This is 10 years of good stuff and good times, but then we'll get a title match to get to. Everybody in the back, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it.